Good evening and welcome to the Town of Cary Planning and Zoning Board meeting. Thank you for joining us tonight. I now call this meeting to order. Our board clerk will now take roll call for this evening.
Mike Roselli and Jeff Moncrief will not be able to join us this evening. For the record, I will verbally confirm the following board members as present. Sal Camarata.
Here.
Bojana Aiton.
Here.
Chris Johnson.
Here.
Stephen Crutchfield. Sean McAndrew.
Here.
Andy Coe. Ken George.
Here. Thank you. The Cary Community Plan will continue to be the guiding document for this board. Our role is to function as citizen advisors to the Town Council, who will make the final decision on all rezoning activity. Our citizen opinions, based on the community plan document, play a very important role in advising our town leaders. While this is a public meeting, it is not a public hearing. There is no opportunity for the public to speak during this meeting. However, if you have comments about any of these items, we encourage you to reach out to the staff by email or phone. You may also reach out to our board members through email. You may also contact the council directly through email or during the public speaks out portion of any regularly scheduled town council meeting. These board meetings may be streamed live on the Town of Cary website and will be posted to YouTube. All past planning and zoning board meetings are available to view on YouTube. First thing on the agenda is actually approving the agenda itself. Everyone should have had time to take a look at it. If there's no changes, would someone make an adoption to accept the agenda?
Motion to accept.
Second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor state aye.
Aye.
The next is the approval of the June 24th meeting minutes. Again, all this has been posted and I'm sure everyone's had a chance to look over them. And if there aren't any changes to those June 24th meeting minutes, would someone make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Would someone second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We only have one case tonight, and it actually has two pieces. It is 23 REZ01 Alston Yards PDP rezoning, which also includes consideration of Act 33 Comprehensive Plan Amendment. Rob Wilson, Assistant Development Services Director, will share the staff's presentation. Following his presentation, the applicant will share their remarks. All board members will have the opportunity to ask questions of staff and applicant. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm excited to share a proposed rezoning at a key intersection in the Alston area. This site has an interesting history that I'll talk more about shortly. The 46.3-acre Alston Yards site is located in the northwest quadrant of the NC 55 O'Kelly Chapel Road intersection. It is located north of NC 540 with Parkside Town Commons to the east, the Amerton and Stonewater Apartments to the west, and the Hawthorne at Parkside Apartments to the south. The site is currently a collage of 5 different zoning districts, 2 overlay zoning districts, and it's also part of the Alston Activity Center concept plan. This number of districts on a single site seems like a lot and is a record for me. The applicant's proposing to rezone the site to Mixed Use District, or MXD, with a Preliminary Development Plan, or PDP. To properly share the history, I'm going to jump ahead and do part of our Cary Community Plan analysis now. As you can see here, I've outlined the site in yellow, and the portion of the site in brown is designated to be a destination center. The developer is under contract to purchase this portion of the site. Meanwhile, the northwestern portion of the site, which is shown in green, is owned by Cary and is designated as park open space on the future growth framework map. A key part of this proposal is a comprehensive plan amendment that would change the designation of the town's portion of the site from park open space to destination center. With this proposed change in mind, let's dive into the history. In 2002, when the council approved the Stonewater Plan Development District along O'Kelly Chapel Road and Green Level Church Road, which is just west of the Alston Yards water developer designated some of the PDD as town park recreation, including a 15-acre parcel in the northeastern corner, which is outlined here in pink. When one looks closer at the overall site's constraints, it becomes clear why the developer offered the town. It's separated from the rest of Stonewater by a stream buffer, and the western part of the area is wetlands. Of this land given to the town, only about 9 acres was developable. Without any site access to the north or east, it was more cost efficient to just give this land to the town and put the density and development elsewhere in the PDD rather than building a bridge to develop such a small area. So this is how Cary acquired this 15-acre property, and it came to be designated for town park or open space. I'm now going to shift and focus on the land to the north and east of this Stonewater open space property, which is still shown here in pink. In 2003, Cary purchased a 44.85-acre tract located north of this property. This acquisition provided access to frontage along NC 55, and even included the frontage where there would ultimately be a median break and a traffic signal in the future. So now let's fast forward 2 decades. By this time, we've had several developers look at the property in blue, which frames the northwest quadrant of the NC 55 O'Kelly Chapel Road intersection. But nobody has really seriously pursued development on it due to 3 primary issues. First, the site doesn't have good northern access. It really needs to be able to get to what is now a 3-way signalized intersection at the median break on NC 55. The second primary issue, as indicated on Cary's GIS maps, is that the site has streams and jurisdictional features that bisect and fragment the southern portion of the site. For purposes of understanding this case, though, I'd like to do an even deeper dive into the site. This is a topographic map of the developer's site to the right and the town's land to the upper left. I realize there's a lot of color here, and not everyone knows how to read a topographical map, so I'm going to take just a moment to walk us through it. The blue areas represent the lowest elevations, and in this case represent the stream corridors that run through the site. And just for reference, the water is flowing from the south to the north, or from the bottom to the top of this exhibit. Meanwhile, the green represents where the land is beginning to rise up from these blue creek areas. And the yellow and the orange colors represent the highest elevations on the site. You can see here where I've identified the highest elevations with red asterisks. For purposes of what comes next, I'm going to focus on the landform and the topography on the eastern part of the site between the creek and NC 55. Now, this area is generally encompassed in the red oval that you see here. So just to make sure we understand the landform on the east side of the creek, I've added some white arrows here that show the direction that the land is dropping from these highest elevations. The white arrows also suggest the direction that dirt wants to be moved on the site to create building pads and development areas that are flat enough to be ADA compliant. So now that we understand the second issue regarding the streams and the topo on the site, we can talk about the third and final issue. The northern part of the developer's blue track is so narrow that it drops down to less than 200 feet in width. So the bottom line is that the northern half of the developer's site is too narrow to support a street with buildings on both sides. For that matter, the northernmost part of the developer's site isn't even wide enough to support a street with buildings on one side of the street. Former Cary Economic Development Director Ted Boyd spoke with several developers who were interested in the site, but just couldn't make it work. Along the way, he gained an understanding of all the challenges that I've shared here. He also recognized that if this fourth quadrant of the NC 55 and O'Kelly Chapel Road intersection was going to develop per the community plan, a different approach would be needed. Specifically, if the site was going to be successful, it would require the use of some of the adjoining town land to the west. And in 2022, Ted was approached by the current applicant and developer who was interested in working together under such a scenario. The idea that emerged was that if Cary would be willing to swap the portion of the town land outlined here in pink with the developer, a north-south Main Street could be established on an axis that would provide enough space to footprint development on both sides of the street. This location would also provide appropriate spacing between this street and the signalized intersection on NC 55. The result is Cary's property would increase from 15.09 acres to 16.5 acres, and Alston Yard's site would decrease from 31.2 to to 29.79 acres. Although the town ends up with more land, a much smaller amount of the town's resulting land would be developable. In order to balance this difference, the developer is proposing that approximately 40,000 square feet, or about 9/10 of an acre of land, would be conveyed to Cary on the Alston Yards site and would be a public park that runs along a portion of the proposed Main Street in the development. As part of the requested land swap, the developer is proposing to pay for the cost of clearing, grading, and extending utilities to the public park site, and also provide funding for and construct park facilities. If the rezoning is approved, the requested land swap would come before the council as a separate item, as authorized by state law, and the details of potential funding would be provided as part of the land swap at that time. So with this history and context in mind, let's resume our typical rezoning discussion of this combined site. Cary's Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources map identifies a significant north-south greenway that would run through this site, connecting an existing greenway on the south side of O'Kelly Chapel Road to the 45 acres that the town owns immediately north of Alston Yards. NC 55 is currently a 6-lane, median-divided thoroughfare in the Alston area. O'Kelly Chapel Road is envisioned to also be a 6-lane thoroughfare east of Stonecroft Lane, although it has not been fully built at this time. The 2019 Shaping Cary's Tomorrow bonds include funding for widening O'Kelly Chapel Road, a project anticipated to get underway between 2025 and 2029. There are currently no fixed-route transit facilities in the Alston Destination Center. The closest fixed-route service is currently 4¼ miles away at the intersection of NC 55 and High House Road. While there are no immediate plans for fixed-route transit in the vicinity of the subject property, the applicant has included a condition to provide accommodations for a transit stop along NC 55 for a future service location to be determined at the time of development plan review. In terms of access and circulation, the applicant is proposing 3 points of ingress and egress at both the northern and southern ends of the site and in the middle. For the northern point of access, the developer is proposing to construct a short street on the town's 44-acre parcel to the north in order to gain access and create the fourth leg of a full movement signal at the median break on NC 55. In addition to providing access to Alston Yards, this street would double as the entrance to any future development on this adjacent town property. In the middle of the site's frontage on NC 55, the PDP is proposing a right-in, right-out. The PDP also includes a commitment to install a dedicated signalized northbound left turn lane in the median on NC 55, subject to NCDOT and Cary approval at the time of development plan review. Finally, the PDP is also proposing a southern connection to O'Kelly Chapel Road, and the developers offered to provide a traffic signal at Alston Avenue and O'Kelly Chapel Road if approved by NCDOT. Let's talk about land uses. Given the length of the site, I'm going to break it into northern and southern parts. On the northern part of the site, there is a commitment to provide commercial uses on the ground floor of buildings 1 and 2, which is reflected by the red color for part of these buildings' footprints. In addition, residential multifamily is allowed on any floor in these 2 pods. Building 3 has a commitment to include a minimum of 100 hotel rooms. Commercial, office, and residential uses on any floor. Buildings 4 and 5 are commercial uses and can be 1 to 3 stories in height. These buildings will front on a community gathering space next to the middle entrance into the development. On the southern part of the site, there is a commitment to provide commercial uses on the ground floor of buildings 6A and 6B, which is reflected again by the red color for part of these buildings' footprints. Buildings 6A and 6B can also have office uses on any floor, and Building 6A includes a commitment to have a minimum of 30,000 square feet of office. Building envelope 7 is more conceptual due to market uncertainty and could include more than 1 building. Allowed uses include commercial, office, residential, and hotel. Since this pod's on a corner, it's worth noting that the PDP includes a condition: building with a distinct corner feature shall anchor the intersection of NC 55 and O'Kelly Chapel Road, and that there shall not be parking between this building and the respective streets. This pod also includes limitations regarding the visibility of structured parking from NC 55 and O'Kelly Chapel Road. And last but not least, building envelope 8 is also conceptual and could include one or more buildings. It can be a hotel or multifamily. Finally, as I mentioned earlier regarding the land swap, the PDP proposes to construct a public park that's linear in shape. The park would be approximately 40,000 square feet in size and would have connections to the greenway running through the site and would be owned and maintained by Cary. In order to have the ability to adjust to market demand in our post-COVID environment, the applicant's requesting additional flexibility between land uses. So as you can tell in the table, the maximums have a range, and there is the potential for the overall site to have a maximum of 400,000 square feet of office, 1,120 dwelling units, 100,000 square feet of commercial, or 380 hotel rooms. The way this would work is that the applicant would have to provide supplemental traffic analysis during development plan review to be able to shift program from one land use to another in this maximum range. For example, the developer could do supplemental traffic analysis to reduce the amount of office from 400,000 to 200,000 square feet and use this freed up traffic capacity to potentially increase the number of multifamily units to 1,120 and the amount of commercial up to 100,000 square feet. The PDP also includes customized street cross sections. The primary street cross section includes the ability to do angled parking that would count towards LDO parking requirements with a 17-foot wide sidewalk zone. All of the proposed streets include a 17-foot streetscape and setback from the back of curb, the idea being that there will always be a minimum of 7 feet of width for a street tree and a minimum of 10 feet of space for either a 10-foot multi-use path or 5-foot sidewalk and 5 feet of grass. The PDP proposes to construct the north-south greenway envisioned by the Park and Rec master plan through the site, as well as connections to the public park and the proposed roundabout to the north. This would be approximately 1/2 mile of new greenway. The idea of constructing a pedestrian bicycle bridge across NC 55 has been raised as a way to potentially enhance pedestrian and bicycle mobility across this corridor and provide an architectural feature at this gateway into Cary. While staff has explored this idea enough to realize there are 3 viable locations for such a ped bridge along Alston Yards' NC 55 frontage, there is no design or funding for construction of such a facility at this time. The Alston Yards applicant is proposing to provide a landing pad along their site's frontage, along with a connection to their on-site greenway. The location of these features would be determined at the time of development plan review. As far as parking is concerned, the applicant's proposing that 100% of the parking in pods 1 through 5 would be structured. The applicant is also proposing to have on-street angled and parallel parking in this area that would count towards fulfilling LDO parking requirements. The developer is also requesting an alternative standard to allow unmanned gates and parking decks for both residential and non-residential uses. There is no structured parking commitment on buildings 6A and 6B. A surface lot is indicated, although these lots could be serviced by surface or structured parking on the northern end of Pod 7. Regarding Pods 7 and 8, the applicant's proposing that 60% of the parking in these pods will be structured. As far as building height, the 2 northern pods, 1 and 2, as well as Pod 6A at the site's middle NC 55 entrance are proposed to be up to 7 stories in height and are denoted here with yellow circles. Pods 3, 6B, and 7, which are all shown here with pinkish purple circles, are proposed to be a maximum of 10 stories. And Pod 8, which is internal to the site, is proposed to be up to a maximum of 15 stories and is shown here in orange. Finally, Pods 4 and 5, which are shown with white circles, are proposed to be up to a maximum of 3 stories. There is a small 20-foot by 20-foot family cemetery known as the Barbie Hobson Family Cemetery located on the property within the boundary of proposed building envelope 1. Per a report prepared by a consultant in November of 2023, the cemetery is typical of a rural family cemetery from the 19th and early 20th centuries. 6 grave markers mark the final resting spot of at least 7 individuals. The cemetery is not identified in federal, state, or county records and has been determined to not be eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. State law speaks very specifically to such situations, and this is a process that the council encounters from time to time, most recently in 2020 and 2022. The applicant has followed legal requirements in terms of trying to identify and contact potential descendants. No responses have been received, so the developer is proposing to follow state law and relocate the remains to the Wake Memorial Cemetery in Cary. If the council approves the rezoning request, then a separate staff report regarding the proposed relocation would subsequently be brought before council for consideration. Alston Yards is also proposing a design guidebook as a condition of approval. The purpose of the guidebook is to ensure that the development's designed and constructed with an overall higher level of quality and higher caliber of design than would otherwise be required by Cary's existing architectural requirements. The guidebook specifically focuses on architecture, landscape design, and parks, greenways, and open spaces. Like Fenton's design guidebook, pictures would be used to identify key concepts, and proposed development would be required to be substantially similar to these pictures at the time of development plan review. Other zoning conditions include utilizing green infrastructure, providing 5% of the units as affordable for 30 years at 80% AMI, providing EV charging stations throughout the development, and I'll provide a little bit more detail on that later, using LED or equivalent lighting for internal streets and parking decks, and providing recycling stations for each building envelope. The developers expressed interest in forming a development agreement with Cary to help make the Alston Yards project more financially viable due to the significant amount of structured parking and street greenway infrastructure. They're also looking to provide additional improvements and benefits to Cary that would not be provided by the rezoning alone. For example, additional greenway connections and additional O'Kelly Chapel Road improvements could potentially be achieved. A development agreement would also provide a format to manage the implementation of the land swap and the construction of the proposed public park if the rezoning is approved. Cary staff has had preliminary discussions with the developer regarding such an agreement. If a draft agreement is developed, it will come to the council separately at a future date. The PDP is proposing a total of 17 alternative standards that are detailed in your staff report. I've mentioned several of these requests as part of my presentation. I'd like to highlight a few more here. Regarding streetscapes and setbacks, the developer is proposing to grade and replant the streetscape buffers along the site's NC 55 and O'Kelly Chapel Road frontages. Flexibility is also being requested to reduce the streetscape to a minimum width of 20 feet, as long as the average required width of 30 feet is still met. Flexibility is also requested to allow up to 8 feet of a Duke Energy underground power easement to overlap with the streetscape along NC 55. And the applicant's also requesting the ability to have a 0-foot setback and buffer along the site's northern property line. Two other alternative standards include the ability to remove 3 champion trees that are in the paths of streets and allow up to 10-foot retaining walls in stormwater facilities. In exchange, the developer is committing to limiting retaining walls between the development on NC 55 and O'Kelly Chapel Road that are visible from these streets to a maximum of 6 feet in height with a decorative appearance. So, now that I've hopefully provided a thorough background on the proposal, it's time to shift our focus, the planning board's focus here, to determining whether the proposal is consistent with the Imagine Cary Community Plan. In staff's preliminary analysis of the community plan, we found policies in 7 different chapters potentially apply. Regarding the Live chapter, the proposal provides multifamily housing and the opportunity to live in a vertically integrated mixed-use setting. The proposal also provides affordable housing for a period of 30 years. Regarding the Work chapter, the proposal enhances locational appeal to businesses and workers through vertical integration and a design guidebook. Also provides space to attract small businesses, supports the needs of new and expanding firms by including office, commercial, and a hotel, and the proposal also provides employment opportunities through these on-site non-residential uses. The proposal accomplishes shop chapter policies of providing commercial uses within a destination center and supporting the existing Alston Destination Center. Regarding the engaged chapter, the proposal seeks to maintain a balanced park and open space system by constructing a new public park, retaining 30% of the site as open space, and constructing over 1/2 mile of new greenway trails per the Park and Rec Master Plan. Regarding the shape chapter, the proposal seeks to place high-density development in a strategic location in a destination center, while encouraging mixed-use development by making commitments to residential, commercial, office, and hotel uses. Development of this site also supports infill development, as the property is surrounded by development on 3 sides and town-owned property on the 4th. Finally, the proposal seeks to preserve Cary's attractive appearance and quality with a design guidebook. Regarding the move chapter, the proposal seeks to ensure safety through the use of customized street cross-sections that include sidewalk zones where buildings front on streets and multi-use street side trails or sidewalks on both sides of all other streets. The proposal also seeks to ensure a well-maintained system by providing a northern connection to the NC 55 traffic signal and median break, and by proposing a new traffic signal at the intersection of Alston Avenue and O'Kelly Chapel Road. The neighborhood meeting was attended by approximately 30 citizens. Questions and comments focused on the amount of Cary land that would be developed and O'Kelly Chapel Road. Specifically, citizens were concerned about traffic impacts on O'Kelly Chapel Road, when the road would be widened, and if there would be a traffic signal at the intersection of Alston Avenue and O'Kelly Chapel. Between the neighborhood meeting and mailing out notices for the council public hearing, we did not receive any emails or calls regarding the proposal. After sending out council public hearing notices and posting the property, we did receive one phone call from a citizen. The citizen wanted to better understand the land swap and make sure that Cary was not being taken advantage of. At the council public hearing, there was one speaker who supported additional places to shop and providing services for nearby employers, including RTP. At the same time, the citizen was concerned about traffic and poor levels of service at intersections on O'Kelly Chapel Road. The citizen requested that improvements be made to O'Kelly Chapel Road, to the O'Kelly Chapel Road corridor if this proposal is approved. Council questions and comments from the public hearing are included in your staff report. We have not received any phone calls or emails since last month's public hearing. The applicant made the following changes after the public hearing: increasing the affordable housing commitment from 15 to 30 years, increasing the minimum streetscape width along NC 55 and O'Kelly Chapel Road from 10 feet to 20 feet, reducing the maximum building height from 15 to 10 stories for 3 of the pods, and they added criteria regulating the location and screening of dumpsters. The applicant also revised their EV charging commitment to provide charging ports via a ratio based on the number of units and the amount of development that's built, instead of the previously offered fixed number, 40, of charging ports. As a result of this revised approach, the number of charging ports provided is now linked to the amount of development that's actually constructed. And it could range from 39 ports if the minimum scenario is built to 83 ports if the maximum scenario is constructed. So to summarize, as discussed, the Alston Yard site has constraints. As a result, in order for destination center type of development to occur in this corner, a land swap will be needed. In addition, an amendment to the community plan will be needed. Therefore, the site cannot be developed in the proposed manner unless the town is a willing partner, both as a property owner and as a regulator. Thus, if the proposed rezoning were to be approved by council, there would be a number of other important parts of the proposal that would subsequently need to be brought forward for council's consideration. Staff believes the proposed community plan amendment is warranted based on the identification of new opportunities that are not adequately addressed in the current plan's future growth framework map. We provide important additional space to achieve the intent of the Alston Destination Center and would allow development of this quadrant of the NC 55 O'Kelly Chapel Road intersection. And we note that rezoning can still be used, through, especially a PDP, to achieve open space through conditions. If the Act 33 is recommended for approval, then staff finds the rezoning to be consistent with the Imagine Cary Community Plan as it supports multiple policies in 7 different chapters of the community plan and supports development of a key infill site and a destination center. This concludes staff's presentation. The applicant's representative, Toby Coleman, is here to address you this evening. Following Mr. Coleman's remarks, staff will be available for your questions.
Good evening, Chair Crutchfield, members of the PCB. My name is Toby Coleman. I'm an attorney with Smith Anderson, and here on behalf of the applicant, Heritage Properties. With me tonight are three gentlemen from Heritage Properties: Ryan Blair, Roger Edwards, and Will Harrington. Also with us is Michael Vamprin with McAdams, who I'm sure y'all are a bit familiar with. He is the man with the plan. He helped really draw up the PDP and the other guidance documents in this, as well as Nate Bachwin, who is with McAdams. He's a traffic engineer. This is a case where I think Rob has really done a whole lot of the heavy lifting for us. This is a very complicated project that Rob has done an excellent job. I was actually counting. I'm looking up at the screen. 60 slides, I think, probably is well enough alone on some level. I do want to say that this has really been I think it was clear from Rob's presentation, but this has really been a product of collaboration with the town. This is really the only way, as I think Rob laid out in detail, the only way that this parcel was ever really going to be developed, because it was really an undevelopable parcel, as Rob said, was through a partnership with the town to come up with a vision like this. And the result has, I think, been a win-win for the town and for Heritage, in that what you have is a high-quality mixed-use project in a destination center, very much aligned with the Alston area plan that's now 2 decades old, that you really haven't seen in the Alston area. It really is that sort of urban center for the western gateway of the town, which is what the Alston area plan really envisioned for that area. And it's a dense development, but it's also coming out, it's integrated with nature. You see the park, you see the natural areas resulting from the stream buffers, and you also have the greenways that are really a result, again, of working in collaboration, a developer working in collaboration with the town. We're happy to answer any questions. As you've seen from the report, we did go to town council just a month ago. So we have come here relatively quickly. We have made some changes, but I think we were heartened by the reception we got at town council. We tried to address the limited number of questions we had, but we're very, really happy with what we heard from council and the support we heard for the vision. So with that, we are available for questions, and really interested to hear what y'all's thoughts and eager to move forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Rob, before we open up the questions for board members, could we just do a couple of clarifications that maybe it's only for me, but
Absolutely.
others may benefit? So at the town council meeting, there was items that were really not covered because they were going to be talked about in another session. Mm-hmm. Those items, not looking to get into any kind of detail, but it may help these folks to understand so that they don't start getting into that area. What things are pending? What are some of the things that we shouldn't focus on or should focus on right here tonight?
I would say the land swap, the cemetery relocation, the development agreement, those are things that the council will handle separately. I'd say focus on the mix of uses, the land uses, the mix of uses, the building heights, density, the consistency of the development program with the community plan is what staff would suggest that the board focus on. We've tried to give you the full context so that you can appreciate why is the town co-applicant and there's town land involved with this. But we would encourage you to focus on the development program, the form, the design guidebook. Do the components, if you ignore the land ownership piece, what's proposed to develop there, does that seem to the board to be consistent with the community plan or not consistent with the community plan.
So we really don't need to worry about that the town in this situation is actually an owner, and you're negotiating with a developer. You have a development agreement that's kind of pending, and you really want this board to focus on the design and the things we normally look at and not get hung up on, I guess, the financials. Is that basically it?
That's correct. So if you think that the swap is 1/10 of an acre off, or, you know, they're paying for the park to help offset, we would encourage you to leave those things to the council as owner to weigh and focus solely as regulator. The regulator role, is this rezoning as proposed, the land uses, the density, the commitments to design, architecture, does that deliver a proposal that you feel is consistent with the community plan, much as you would consider other rezonings that are simpler, don't involve land swaps? We would encourage you to try to look at it in that framework. And we think that that will help both staff and the council to know those thoughts as to whether or not the board feels this is consistent.
So you really don't see the town council focusing, or, I mean, I know anything's possible, but you really don't see the town council changing the basic things that we would focus on. So in other words, if we, you know, we're looking at the way this is laid out, we're looking at, does this fit the community plan, even though I know we're changing it. But those are the items that probably would stay consistent.
Yeah, the geometry, I'll call it, the track geometry,
The buildings,
yes.
the intent of the buildings,
yes,
the parking.
the access and circulation, the location of the buildings, the height of the buildings, the proposed uses. I think at this point it's unlikely that there's going to be significant, there may be a few little tweaks. If anything major were to occur, as is always the case with any rezoning, we would obviously talk about and likely be bringing it back for the board's consideration. But at this point, we've, over a year has been invested in developing this plan and bringing it to public hearings. So we think it's unlikely that there are going to be any significant changes to I'll call it the land uses and development program. So, and if there happen to be, then, well, we would come back to visit with you. But at this point, we're not expecting that that's going to be the case. We think it's going to be more about the details, the property boundaries, the financial arrangements. So those are the types of things we believe that the council is going to focus on at the work session.
Okay, perfect. Like I said, I just didn't want, this could go so many different ways. I didn't want people to waste their time on something that really was not in our scope.
It has a lot of layers, and we're certainly glad to answer any questions.
Well, we'll have questions, don't worry about that. I'm just trying to set up the scenario, but these folks have lots of questions.
Yes.
And then my last clarification,
Sure.
and then we'll get to the questions, is for the Act 33, very briefly, just remind people how that is, what they're really approving there versus the actual rezoning itself.
Sure. I'm going to go back to a
And
slide.
that you can't have one without the other, basically.
Right. So here we go. So this is the current future growth framework map. And as you can see, I believe everyone understands. Aha, I have a mouse. So this is the piece of property owned by the town, and the current land use designation in the future growth framework map is park open space. Act 33 is proposing to change that, I'll call it Florida-shaped area, to destination center. So we'll go from green to brown. And
Perfect.
that's what Act 33 is about.
Okay, I just want to make sure everyone understood that we didn't do that, then this thing kind of
Correct.
collapses.
Correct. Amending because rezoning should be consistent with the community plan. This would be considered first, and there'll be two motions at the end. You'll decide whether or not this proposed amendment to the community plan is, approvable or not approvable. And then if you feel that this change is approvable, you would then consider the rezoning. If you do not consider Act 33 to be approvable, then we would assume that you don't consider the rezoning to be either.
Okay, perfect. All right, that's enough setting the stage. We'll now move to questions. We'll start with Sean.
Since we're on the development agreement,
Yes.
not to know the details, however, if things fall apart, what happens to the zoning? In other words, what happens to the conditions? You know, my concern is, okay, lots of work done into it, it goes forward, yay, great. But if there are significant changes to the development agreement because of a change in developer for whatever reason, what causes it to come back to what causes it to come back to us? In other words, the free form with the development agreement, you know, where is that? Just because, you know, here the conditions are what we are actually deciding on to see if it's within the plan or not, if it's consistent. But without an understanding of the development agreement of what happens if that falls through, what happens? And thank you, that's who I was looking for.
So the development agreement is a contractual agreement between the developer and the town to essentially implement the zoning rules. The development agreement cannot alter them.
Okay,
So if, basically, the rezoning will set the base rules that any future development on these properties would have to abide by. What the development agreement does is it allows the town and the developer to engage in negotiations about potential cost sharing or the town paying money for public development that is going to be incorporated into this. And then, as Robin mentioned, there is going to be a land swap that would need to happen. That's usually very technical. There's timing related to it, so it puts in deadlines, and it basically implements everything. What would happen is, if there was a change in the development agreement that would actually alter what you saw proposed today, that would have to be rezoned. There would be a rezoning, or there would be some change that would have to come through and alter that. So, just to simplify things, the development agreement cannot change the zoning of this property. This is the gist of it. Yes. And then one other thing to mention is if we don't technically, you all do not technically have to do the comp plan amendment in order for the rezoning to go through. If you approve the rezoning and then council approves it, the comp plan is automatically updated. The reason we're doing it this way is just to make that abundantly clear that the comp plan will be being amended. And staff felt it was cleaner to have you think about it this way, just so it was abundantly clear what was happening.
no, thank you for clarifying that.
Okay.
You still have the floor. Any other
I was-
questions you have? So run, go. That's okay.
Running.
Run.
All right, for the town, is there consideration for the that is the pad as well as, the potential landing site for the bridge going across 55? Is there an idea that will be co-located because, that would, is that one of the visions as far as putting those things together? Just because there's such limited space?
Really, without civil design, without civil engineering, it's a little premature to
Okay.
comment on the movements that would relate to where the transit stop wants to be located versus the ped bridge. Just keep in mind the ped bridge is elevated. We have to think about AD accessibility, so there are likely very long ramps as you work your way down. And so we'll have to wait and get more into the design details before we know what's best. We'll want to make sure that we have appropriate site distances and things as you're moving up and down through that corridor too. So I think that's a detail that we're not really prepared to speak further on tonight, and it's part of why we've got it as a condition that we'll figure out as part of the development plan review.
When we're saying the buffer, the buffers can go down to 20 feet with the condition, as long as the average is 30. Because of how this is structured, is the park areas that will be turned over to the town of Cary per the design going to be included as part of those buffers as to set up the average?
The park is, let me go to, so as you can see, when we talk about the streetscapes being reduced, that would be this dark green line you see along 55.
Right.
And the dark green line that you see along O'Kelly Chapel Road. The park area is internal to the site. The way buffer averaging works is you have to make it up out here along the streetscape. So if you drop down to 20, to keep the math simple, you need some areas where you're doing above 30, but it's got to be contiguous and part of that streetscape. So it's got to be along that linear green. It's just going to get a little fatter to make up for where it's skinnier.
But I'm saying on O'Kelly Chapel Road, you have, that areas were supposed to be turned over in one of the other sections. That was being turned back over and is back to town property. That's part of the land swap. So if that is town property, is that being included in the streets?
It would not be able to be included in that case.
Okay.
Well,
That's why I'm asking.
no, I think that remains to be determined as part of the development agreement and the land swap. So I'm not sure we're prepared to. For the moment, I would suggest you consider that it could be, because it is one cohesive proposal.
Right.
So if there were, now the reductions on O'Kelly would need to be made up on O'Kelly, and the reductions on 55 would need to be made up and averaged on 55.
All right, so at the corner, there's a,
There's a break
an
point.
invisible line of demarcation that,
Yeah. Yeah, you can't do all 20 feet on 55 and make it all up over here on O'Kelly with the open space. So there are some natural limits that will factor in as to how we do averaging.
with the 15 floors for Area 8.
Yes.
Yes, I know they really would prefer a hotel, but can that be 15 floors of residential if that is what the market demands? In other words, the 15 floors, does it go with go with the pod itself?
Yes.
All right, so it could be a 15-story apartment building
be
or a
either land use.
15-story office building or a 15-story
Well,
everything building.
8 is either a hotel or multifamily.
Okay.
Office isn't an allowed use on that.
Okay,
So, and for what it's worth, our understanding is that the current owner is going to retain Pod 8, and there'll be a separate developer for Pod 8,
okay.
which is why it remains at 15 rather than having dropped to 10 like the others.
All right, with the Greenway, where it's dumping out at, it's kind of in the middle of a hill. It seems to terminate to nothing. And so
Where you say dumping out, are you referring
onto
to?
O'Kelly Chapel,
On O'Kelly Chapel, okay.
it's going, that's a hill, going up. So if it's ending there, just to sidewalks, is it just to go to sidewalks either way? Because it doesn't seem like it's a far way to connect to another greenway without something going over O'Kelly. Or is it going to go up to the idea to, at Alston Road and cross over there?
So as part of the proposal, they're showing a multi-use path on the
Okay.
northern side of O'Kelly Chapel Road, and it will connect. Now, whether it connects in that location, or it might connect in a slightly different location, will be figured out at development plan. Another item is the Park and Rec Master Plan talks about a tunnel, and that's a very expensive item.
Yeah.
Setting these things up, and we currently have a stub on the south side of O'Kelly Chapel Road, and it's set up so that you can go to a tunnel if there is a tunnel in the future, but there's a path to get up to O'Kelly Chapel Road. And so we may have a very similar situation here. And then how the tunnel occurs is something that we'll continue to work on. There's no funding, there's no capital funding at this time for that.
All right. Thank you very much.
Andy?
Yeah, thank you. Somebody mentioned earlier that this has lots of layers. That's an understatement. But amazing collaboration and lots to consider. Can you just help explain to me the timeline? Is it being phased in? Obviously, I don't want to assume that Building 1 will be built first and then Building 8 is going to be built last, but is there a general idea of this group of buildings are going to be built first and it's going to be over X amount of time, and just kind of big picture?
So I can speak very generally, and if you'd like more detail, we can have the applicant come up and speak
Okay.
to that. But at a very general level, the discussion has been about starting at the north end as phase 1, probably 1, 2, 4, and 5. 3 could come along with phase 1 or could be part of phase 2. Phase 2 would involve the 6A and 6B, and then 7 and 8 would be a phase 3. That loosely, there could end up being 7 and 8 could be 3 and 4.
Right.
In terms of timing, I really couldn't speak
no,
to
that's a
that.
tough
We
one.
can
I'm
bring the
always-
applicant up if you'd like to hear their thoughts on that.
I won't do that to you.
All right.
Yesterday?
Right, there aren't any commitments
Yeah.
in the PDP as to the phasing or the timing. Now, development agreements can sometimes be structured to incentivize doing more sooner. So, but as far as the rezoning, which
Okay.
is what we encourage you to focus on tonight, there aren't commitments as it relates to timing or phasing.
Okay, no, that's helpful. I don't need to go through the specifics of timing. I was curious about the ranges that were, the updates that were made in regards to the number of units, whether it's residential, hotel, office space, that changed kind of drastically, I guess, to give a lot more wiggle room, but is there any other rationale? I know it said that, I guess, based on market conditions, the developers would like to move things up and down, but I guess there was initial range that was agreed to, and then it looked like almost doubled in many cases.
So these are the numbers that were included in the TAR,
Right.
and see if this works. Yep, there we go. And then you can see they're looking at what if the office market is soft and they can't, market and do 400,000 square feet of office. There is a commitment to a minimum of 100,000 square feet of office under all scenarios.
Right.
But if they're unable to do 400,000 square feet of office, and that could include medical office, they are looking for the flexibility that they could drop, that traffic impact associated with that 200,000 square feet. They could drop the office from 400 down to 200, and then they could take that traffic impact and invest it in more multifamily and more commercial. So conceptually, that's what they're asking for the flexibility to do. It's a little complicated to explain. They can only do this with detailed additional traffic analysis,
Right.
which would be at development plan stage, and where they show that they're having the same or less traffic impact than what was modeled in the TAR.
Understood.
So-
Okay. And then the last question, I'm sure there's a quick answer for this as well, about the not committing for parking for building 6A and 6B. Is there, I guess, a rationale behind? Some is it might be 60% they're being covered, and here it's 0. I'm just kind of curious more than anything.
Staff's understanding is structured parking is expensive, and this is something as the development agreement discussions play out, they could choose to do more, but I think when putting together the minimum that they felt they could deliver on, structured parking for 6 was more than they could accommodate.
Okay.
That's staff's impression. I guess I'll ask, does the applicant care to offer any other comments, or is that enough of an answer? We're going to let Ryan Player come and give you a little bit more information on that ask.
Hello, good evening. Ryan Blair with Heritage Capital. So in regards to parking, we suggested and put a condition for 100% in building envelopes 1 through 5. And then when you move to building envelope 6, it's a small parcel. It's about 2 acres in size. So we envision a shared parking scenario. In our vibrant mixed-use developments, we really like collision of people of office users coming out and sharing decks, so we don't have to build as much parking that's unused and wasted. So in that specific pod, as you can see in the PDP that I think Rob is going to, there's a small surface parking area. One of the challenges with the Alston area now in the developments is that every development, retail, et cetera, has surface parking. So with us committing to a high degree of structured parking, we have to get the community used to coming into the development. So we do that by having some level of convenience parking. If that's full at a point in time, they get used to going into the decks, and it's a gradual change.
Right.
So that surface parking 1 is meant to accomplish that and also create kind of that quick 30-minute to an hour parking. The bulk of that parking, though, would be shared within building envelopes 1, 2, or are the other parking garages.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That's all I have.
It's great. A couple of comments. I think the creativity here is tremendous. I hats off to Ted Boyd and his work earlier, and thank Ryan, Roger, and Will for working this thing out. I think that moniker, if you can't fight City Hall, but I say you can collaborate with Town Hall. So it's a great thing that you guys can. A simple question, a lot of these other things have just been covered. I keep seeing these things come up with EV charging stations. And I was in Colorado last week in the Rockies, and I found out that EVs work great on mountain roads because you don't have to worry about the elevation, altitude, and it picks up mileage when you get on the hill. But I found out there was a lot of differences in level 2 chargers, and that was what I was looking to charge. So when we say EV charging, is that what we really mean, EV charging? We're talking about 240 volt, faster than plugging it in your 110 outlet. Is that when people put EV charging? We just see EV charging, but it doesn't describe what that is. And I just want to make sure, is there a definition by the town of what EV charging stations is, or is there a definition?
So as a zoning condition that's been offered by several developers, I'm not sure we've been asked that question, that level of detail previously. I did try this afternoon to check with some of our review staff, and the person who's got the most experience looking at the few plans that we've had come in with EV charging stations per a rezoning condition, unfortunately wasn't available. I believe that most of what we've seen and been approving thus far has been type 2, but I think your question is probably better answered by the applicant. What type of EV charging stations are they proposing to provide?
Yeah, is it a level 2 charging?
Is there someone on the applicant team that can speak to the type of EV charging that you intend to provide? And
Yes, so at the moment, we do not have any commitments to a particular level of charging. In reality, we generally mix standard charging as well as the fast charging stations within our developments. In this particular development, there's not as many transient users, so you've got the retail users, so we will sprinkle in some fast charging stations.
Okay, that'll be level 3 if you say fast, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
They're all business grade. We don't like to make a commitment because the technology is changing so quickly that to commit to a certain voltage may change 2 years from now. And just in terms of what we've looked at, it's really a difference of the amperage. So you're looking at 40 amps for standard, maybe 50 to 60 for the higher end faster charging. So it's a combination of the electric grid and what Duke Energy can get to us, and it's a very loaded kind of question and equation.
No, to me, I think if we just hear it's a mix of 2 and some 3s, that helps to know, because it's kind of you guys will know what the market, is calling for. But I know that I had experiences with some of them that all of them were level 2, but some of them were 25 to 30% faster than the others because they provided more amperage. Mm-hmm. So, okay, that's good.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. That's all I've got.
Okay, Sal?
Yeah, first comment is I like the flexibility in uses and densities that's going to be allowed, and I think that allows for the market to dictate what really gets built there and should be more successful. I also like the PDP design guidebook and the commitment that's been made there. Question there is, I think there's a commitment through the zoning that stays and needs to be followed. Does that become part of the development agreement? And if not, is that important that it's not part? Or
you're referring specifically to the design guidebook?
yeah.
So the design guidebook would be part of the rezoning. It would be a condition of the preliminary development plan, and it would remain with the property, with the land uses, with the densities, regardless of what occurs with the development agreement.
And then the other question, and this kind of a follow-up to Andy's question on timing. It's not really a timing question, but is there a mechanism that would say at some point, you've built enough multifamily, we need you to build some commercial or retail?
Mm-hmm. There are minimum commitments to retail. Make sure I'm giving you the correct numbers here. So with building envelope 1, there's a minimum commitment of 15,000 square feet of commercial. With Building 2, there's a minimum commitment of 10,000 square feet of commercial. There are minimum commitments of 1,000 square feet of commercial for 4, and 4,000 square feet of commercial for 5. And then Building 6A and 6B both have a minimum commitment of 5,000 square feet of commercial. We would assume these commitments will be provided on the ground floor. That's what's indicated
Okay,
for the
okay.
uses.
Okay.
And then the remainder of the building, which these buildings have minimum heights of typically 3 stories, except for 4 and 5, which are really probably going to be likely be 1-story retail. So with these buildings being a minimum of 3 or 4 stories,
Right.
we're fairly confident that you'll see a mix of uses from the beginning. I guess the exception would be if they started with in 7 or 8, where there isn't a minimum commercial component. The office, although there's a commitment to 100,000 square feet of office, there isn't a commitment as to necessarily where that is provided. There are lots of places it could go. There is a commitment to 100 hotel rooms in building envelope 3, which could be standalone or could be incorporated with other uses. So unlike some projects that would say, by the time we build this many multifamily units, we'll have this much of this and this much of this, they do it at the building envelope level for 6 of the 8 pods, counting 6A and 6B as 1.
Okay.
So hopefully that helps provide a little more kind of under the hood as to how it would play out.
Yep. Good, thank you. No more.
I really like the idea, I like the greenway, I like the connection of the greenway. I think the more connectivity we have with bicycles and pedestrians being able to get around is great. If the bridge gets built, that'll be fantastic, because Parkside Town is another great opportunity for shopping, or just, other activities. My question is, building number 7, are we at grade on that NC 55 highway, or are we like elevated about 6 feet or so? Like, where is that grade hitting? Like, are we seeing 10 stories at that corner? Or is it 10 plus, whatever, 6, 10 feet, whatever it is, above the sidewalk grade?
It may be best answered, just going back to the topographical map.
I'm just trying to gauge how tall that's looking at that corner.
So, as is the case, that area where 7 is located does rise up to that one spot. We've typically observed with development, though, you'd have to bring in a lot of fill dirt to build everything at the highest elevation. So we would anticipate that it's probably going to be around or below the grade of 55. But that being said, we have not seen any civil design, and this would be an appropriate time to ask the applicant, do you have any information that you can share as to the likely elevation of the building footprint on 7 as it relates to 55? Do you expect it to be above, equal, or below?
Equal. Okay, yeah, I just wanted to see if you guys, because like if you look at Parkside Town Commons on the opposite side, there's that,
Come forward.
there is that elevation grade up, right? So they're all kind of hovering a little bit above. Yeah, so I was wondering if 7 and 8 being tall, are they going to be even taller than the 10 feet and the 15 feet, you know what I mean, from the street?
Great question. So one of the challenges with this site obviously is topography. So our design, what we've tried to do is to limit the retaining walls along NC 55. So in other words, what that means is along NC 55, everything will be relatively close to what the grade is. In the specific corner of O'Kelly Chapel in 55, there's a high point that is actually a ridge that goes down grade to 55, and on the backside, as you get by Rob's white arrow and towards the stream, it's about the same elevation of 55. So what we'll do is we'll clear that out and cut and spread that dirt to level all of that land.
All of that side.
One of the requests in our proposal to grade within the street buffer is solely related to this issue.
Okay. Thank you. That was my big question, it's just I wanted to understand that height. Thank you.
I had a similar question, but on the other side. So can anybody estimate what it's going to look like from somebody standing in the Stonewater? Are we going to see the trees in a couple stories? Is it going to be completely hidden? Are we going to see 5 stories? I'm just curious what they're going to be looking at. if anything will be above the tree lines.
So with the stream corridor remaining vegetated, the Pod 8 is the most likely to be visible from Stonewater, and we don't have any information at this time really to speak. The applicant might be best tapped to share their thoughts as to how they would move dirt and the site would develop, and how that building might play out as it relates to the adjoining apartment uses and office uses.
It was also, 8's definitely, I guess, the biggest, but I also was thinking about the hotel.
Pull up a chair.
Yes, so I don't know a specific answer because I can't recall the exact grades of the Stonewater apartments adjacent. The development that we are doing is everything other than Pod 8. The seller's retaining that parcel, and they plan to develop that into either 180 hotel rooms or 180 residential units. For our specific development, the grade is lower significantly than Stonewater, and then you'll have over 100 feet of uncleared area via the trees, which are mature trees, very tall. For Pod 8, you can see that grade actually falls down pretty significantly. So that ground level is going to be at a lower elevation than the Stonewater apartments.
Okay, all right, that's helpful. And then one of the questions I had, I noticed in the backup that there was, I guess, removal of like 3 or 4 champion trees, and some of it was even on the town's park parcel. So I know it's just a crayon on a piece of paper when you show at this level for the roadways, and don't know what the grading would be like, but is there not any way to salvage those, or we know the condition of those trees, and could the roads be tweaked at all to avoid removal of those champion trees?
So in this case, developers asking just in case they need to be removed. If the work can be done disturbing less than 25% of the critical root zones, then they will be retained.
Okay.
And since the town is owner here, we'll certainly be working hard to try to save them. But it seemed
Okay.
better to have permission to go through the official step of asking permission, because until we get the civil engineered plans and see the amount of grading associated with the road.
Yeah, that makes sense. I thought it was more like it had already been determined they got to go. That's why I was a little.
No, it's more of just in case, better to ask for permission and then be able to save them than find yourself in the other situation.
Okay. I think that's all I've got.
Okay. On the park, well, the park, I know this is still in the future, it'll conceptually have its own parking.
There is diagonal parking along the main street that would be.
I mean, I'm for the Cary Public Park.
Correct.
So that's what so if I'm going to the park, where would I be putting my vehicle if I don't live in the development? Because theoretically, this is open to everybody, right?
Right. So 2 things. There will be diagonal parking along the park's frontage on the main street. I don't know how many spaces at this time, but that's part of the conceptual Main Street design, is to have diagonal parking that would run along the whole stretch that's got the dashed kind of maroon colored line. And as you can see, that runs all the way down almost to the edge, at which point it transitions to a different cross-section. But the majority of the park's frontage, there'd be diagonal parking. They've also committed that, if I remember correctly, there are 100 spaces that will be perpetually available to the public. And so those, I expect, will be scattered in the project. And
It'll be a hard sell to let people know that it's really for everybody, since it's in the middle of a development.
yeah, and I guess it's 40,000 square feet, so that's big, and then maybe not so big. So, in terms of I believe our Park and Rec staff is thinking that it's more of a passive type of park. They have land just to the north where it'd probably be more, if there were active uses in this area, those might be more appropriate. There are a fair number of wetlands on the western half of the property to the north as well. So I think they see these land holdings, these opportunities, as not as your soccer fields, not as baseball fields. They see them as more casual, passive type of recreation.
Got it.
So.
And then, this is really just a comment. hopefully someone will, I know that we can't dictate this, the town can't dictate it, but that Building 7 could be looked at for condominiums, not necessarily rental. This is all multifamily. I just always like to push that, ownership is still a big thing, and that hopefully someone coming in here will start, hopefully the economics will work so they can look into that. And then Building 8's probably not worth talking about since these folks aren't developing it, but they are developing Building 7. But I didn't see anything in there about if that was even going to be something thought about. But
The
hopefully it
zoning
will.
doesn't address rental versus ownership. And
Correct.
That's not a condition that we
Correct.
typically have.
That's what I'm saying. I know we can't
Right.
dictate it. I wish we could, but I know we can't. So
But I'm sure the point's been duly noted by the applicant.
thank you. We hope. And then the last one is, always push this, is obviously it's expensive, but that the developer look at solar, especially for the parking structures, maybe the service lot. There's a lot of ways to use solar now that don't take away any space, they don't hurt your design, but hopefully that's something you can prompt as this thing moves forward. And these guys are all smart, so I know they've seen applications like that in other locations. Are there any other questions from any members? Okay, with that, we'll close the questions, and we'll move to consideration. And as we talked about in the beginning, we actually have to take 2 votes. So I would be looking for someone to make a motion for Act 33.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I make a motion to find consistent with the comprehensive plan. I move that the board forward the ACT 33 amendments to the Cary Community Plan to Town Council with a recommendation for approval to amend the comprehensive plan as proposed.
Would someone like to second that?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Andy, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, after all of the comments and the feedback, and I tell you, the first, 10 minutes that you spent really going through the history was something that was very beneficial. I think the collaboration with the town, the fact that the town is an owner, so you've got some skin in the game. There's new opportunities that really warrant this change, and I think although not a clean one-to-one swap, it is about as fair and as equitable, in my opinion, as you could have, and will still meet the open space objectives in the Town of Cary plan.
Okay, thanks. Any other thoughts? Okay, any other comments? Having said that, all in favor of the motion that's been put forward for Act 33, say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Okay, that's unanimous. The next item here is the actual rezoning itself. So would someone like to make a motion for 23 REZ01?
I will.
Go ahead.
I move that the board find 23 REZ 01 is consistent with the comprehensive plan and all other applicable plans. If the comprehensive plan is amended consistent with Act 33 as recommended for by approval by this board, for the reasons set forth in the staff report, presentation, and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board.
Thank you. Would someone like to second?
Second.
Thank you. Ken, your thoughts?
Again, collaboration. It wins every time. It's so much better than being antagonistic, and it's just great that people work together for the betterment. And I'm excited to see something across the road. If I live that long, you never know what it's going to take. You never know when you're going to get hit by a bus either. So I do hope that it's a great opportunity to be that. I'd love to have the pedestrian crosswalk and whatever Cary does in the future to be able to do that and have a great gateway. I love the one neon and all going to Durham, going down the 147, and it'd just be a great thing to, 1 or 2 up Durham and make a much better, beautiful entrance here into Cary as people come down from Durham or on our way home from the DPAC or something. So So I'm excited about it.
Any thoughts?
Again, it wasn't more than 2 weeks ago, when is this going to get developed? As I drove by. You've answered my prayers. So again, I think, to echo what Ken said, it's the collaboration and the town's, consistent, I'll say, support and stake, in the development that will continue to shape this, in a way that's positive for Cary in the long run. So thank you.
I think this is really a good work effort. Obviously, Rob, you've been working on this over a year or probably more than that, so, I mean, it's obvious. But I think there's a lot of still hanging things that need to be worked out. So I am taking a leap of faith, to be honest with you, that what we've seen is actually going to be what it is. And I sincerely hope that if there are any changes, that it comes back to these folks so that they can have thoughts on it again. Because I can see there's just a lot of room for movement. But if it stays the same, it should be a good thing for that gateway, very urban area. It's going to be pretty wild when all this is built out there. But other than that, I agree. It's a good effort. Any other comments from anyone? Okay, having said that, all in favor of the motion that's been put on the table for 23 REZ01, say aye. Aye. Carries unanimously. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Okay, that was a lot. Thank you, everybody. That was a lot to comprehend. Okay, but we do have some new business tonight, and the first thing on the agenda is our Assistant Town Manager, Scott Berry, is going to talk about the upcoming bond issue.
Good evening, Chairman and board members. I'm glad to be here tonight to provide some education on our upcoming bond referendum. So on May 2nd, 2024, Cary's council voted unanimously to proceed with a proposed general obligation bond referendum divided into 2 ballot questions to fund a total of $590 million of capital projects and programs. And you see a picture here of Imagine Cary. If approved, the 2024 community bond referendum will continue our investment in shared aspirations found in the Imagine Cary community plan. Bountiful green spaces, state-of-the-art facilities, and the essence of Cary's exceptional quality of life. The bonds will fund projects that include the expanded access to greenways and green spaces, tennis, and of course pickleball, as well as 2 new modern multi-generational community centers, the first in over 20 years. Complementing these facilities are bonds for additional thoughtful affordable housing initiatives designed to help Cary ensure a place for everyone. The most recent bond issuance occurred in 2019, allocating $112 million for new parks, including Phase 2 of the Downtown Cary Park. Downtown Cary Park exemplifies the benefits of bond investments, quickly becoming a 7-acre oasis and a community highlight. The fact is, bonds have been essential in Cary's growth, supporting infrastructure, historic preservation, and vital facilities. As we evaluated the proposal of the 2024 community bond referendum, the following was taken into consideration. Cary maintains a AAA credit rating, signifying excellent financial health. It's not feasible to pay for these important projects with cash while still sustaining the high level of services our citizens expect and maintaining fund balance levels that are required by law and directed by Cary Council. Instead, Cary relies on funding through bonds. Financing over 20 years allows future citizens who will benefit from these projects to help pay for them. So, on November 5th, 2024, as Cary citizens, and anyone who's watching, you'll have the opportunity to vote for or against each of the 2 separate ballot questions. The Park and Recreation Bond, consisting of $560 million to pay for the capital costs and financing charges of several parks, and the Housing Bond, including $30 million to pay the capital costs and financing charges of housing projects and programs. This map gives a rough idea of where those Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources projects would end up. And I'll take a few moments just to run through some highlights of those projects. So a $300 million multi-generational sports and recreation community center situated in the redeveloping South Hills District. Planned features include amenities for seniors, a 70,000 square foot sports and recreation community center, 8 multi-purpose courts, an esports center equipped with gaming stations and streaming facilities. Mills Park Community Center, a $150 million multi-purpose center in Western Cary, designed to cater to the needs and interests of people of all ages and backgrounds. The vision is for a community center that provides a wide range of facilities and programs and includes access to basketball courts, senior activities, indoor playgrounds, multi-use classrooms, a ceramic studio, aerobic gyms, space for fitness, weight training, plus a walking track. Plans totaling $60 million will expand the Cary Tennis Park Clubhouse and Stadium while adding 25 to 30 new pickleball courts. The expansion aims to significantly expand tennis and pickleball access for all Cary citizens and create more opportunities for hosting regional and national competitions. Walnut Creek Greenway, a $30 million continuation of the 2018 Adaptive Stormwater Initiative. This greenway along Walnut Creek will span 3 miles when completed. It will link downtown Cary Park, Fenton, Wake Med Soccer, the Triangle Aquatic Center, and South Hills District. A master plan for an Asian garden, allocating $10 million. This master plan will develop and execute to construct a 1 to 2 acre Asian garden, reflecting traditional elements such as water features, rock gardens, winding paths, bridges, and meditation areas. This garden encourages cultural sharing and education while honoring the remarkable Asian population, which is down about 20% in Cary. And then also a master plan for the Ernest Jones property, which was purchased with funding from the 2019 Shaping Cary's Tomorrow bond. The 217-acre future park aims to offer an immense experience while protecting and preserving open space and natural elements. The $10 million project could include amenities such as hiking trails, restrooms, and parking. Additionally, it may involve stabilizing the historic home site within the park boundaries. All right, and finally, housing. On November 5th, 2024, Cary citizens will also vote for a $30 million housing bond. So there'll be 2 votes, one is parks, one is housing. If passed, it will further our goals in the Imagine Cary Community Plan and the Housing Plan, helping to ensure all Cary citizens can enjoy the high quality of life Cary has to offer. If approved, these funds would finance housing initiatives aimed at assisting residents with lower income across Cary, so generally 60 to 80% of the area's AMI. All right, so this is the slide with all the numbers on it. New law requires disclosing estimated total bonds plus tax liability to cover costs. So the questions on the ballots will be a lot longer than they were before, but they're trying to give citizens information about what they're voting on. And you can see here the interest rates, 0.59% and 5.34%. The LGC, which is the local government commission, they do a lot of regulatory stuff for financing for municipalities. They gave us those interest rates, and those are the interest rates that anybody issuing bonds has to use. The reality is, as of June 2024, public GO interest rates for issuing municipalities similar to Cary with a AAA bond rating was about 3.5% for 20 years. So while it's not possible for us to predict what future interest rates will be, we can say that if Cary were to sell general obligation bonds this fall, we expect interest rates to be more than 3%, but less than the 5%. Okay, if we're going to get bonds, there's going to be taxes associated with them. If the $590 million in general obligation debt is approved, Cary's property tax rate will increase by 9 cents. This increase will happen when the debt is issued and will be used for debt repayment. The current plan, which is subject to change, is 3 cents in 2026, 3 more cents in 2028, and 3 more in 2030. The 9 cents will not cover the operating costs of the proposed new facilities. These costs will likely be paid for through additional property tax increases. And here's the voter timeline. Obviously, you got to register to vote. Step 1, make sure you're registered. Last day to register to vote is October 11th. Early voting, the first day is October 17th. It goes through November 2nd. Absentee voting, the last day to request an absentee ballot by mail is October 29th. Absentee by mail ballot return deadline is November 5th, and then Election Day is November 5th. Thank you for listening. I do think we have, so two things I'll say. CaryBonds.org is where you can go for all sorts of information. And then we have a video that we're going to share for folks watching and for you.
Thank you.
In Cary, citizens are deeply involved in community planning. Engaged citizens take part in focus groups, serve on advisory boards, and elect a council that reflects their values. Our citizens set a vision for what Cary must and will be in 2040. Everything we need to work on to keep Cary, Cary. On November 5th, Cary citizens will vote on a $560 million Parks and Recreation bond and a separate $30 million housing bond that together, and if approved by voters, will go a long way toward ensuring all citizens can enjoy the high quality of life Cary has to offer for generations to come.
Both bonds on the ballot this November are the result of goals first outlined in the Imagine Cary Community Plan and Cary Housing Plan. Every proposed project in the 2024 Cary Community Bond Referendum is a continuation of decades-long planning. Should citizens vote against the bonds in November, these projects are unlikely to move forward until and unless a future bond is approved. The revitalization of downtown Cary and the completion of the downtown Cary Park represent the power of what general obligation bonds can do for a thriving community. It's been more than 20 years since Cary built a new community center, and the $150 million multi-purpose center being proposed at Mills Park is the result of a rigorous planning process. Designed to cater to the needs and interests of people of all ages and backgrounds, the Mills Park Community Center plan envisions a wide range of facilities and programs and more. If approved by voters, a $300 million multifunctional sports and recreation community center will meet the evolving needs of the community. Centrally located in the redeveloping South Hills district and designed to replace the aging Herb Young Community Center, which opened in 1991, the Sports and Recreation Community Center will offer experiences that bring people together, including 8 multipurpose courts, an e-sports center equipped with gaming stations, and much more. Cary's council members voted unanimously to put these community centers on the ballot so that citizens can play an active and vital role in shaping Cary today.
Also proposed in the 2024 bonds is an expansion to the Cary Tennis Park Clubhouse and Stadium, which includes adding up to 30 new pickleball courts, shaded seating, and increased parking so that more people can enjoy this best-in-class facility. Cary greenways thrive today because of investments made decades ago. Now, for the next generation, Cary can reaffirm its commitment to accessibility and interconnectivity by adding nearly 3 miles to the Walnut Creek Greenway, connecting downtown Cary Park, Fenton, Wake Med Soccer Park, the Triangle Aquatic Center, and South Hills District once completed. Another key component of the Parks and Recreation Bond is the allocation of $10 million to master plan and break ground on the first phase of a 1 to 2 acre Asian garden, reflecting traditional elements such as water features, rock gardens, winding paths, bridges, and meditation areas. This garden will help foster cultural exchange and serve as a setting for a myriad of educational and other programming that reflects and honors Cary's remarkable Asian population and builds on the success of the popular Chinese Lantern Festival at Cocoa Booth Amphitheater. The Nature Park Master Plan envisions a future park on Cary's western border that will offer an immersive experience in a natural setting. In fact, the 217-acre property was initially purchased with funding from the 2019 Shaping Cary's Tomorrow bonds to serve the mission of protecting ecologically important land and expanding heritage programming that preserves Cary's agricultural past.
Complementing the proposed parks and recreation projects are thoughtful, affordable housing initiatives to help ensure Cary is a place for everyone. The mission of the Housing Bond is to improve and expand the town's housing supply, support residents in need, and encourage the continued physical and economic vitality of the community. The $30 million housing bond balances investment across the entire housing continuum to support all Cary residents. Rooted in partnerships and a people-first promise, Cary is committed to providing quality housing programs that enhance and strengthen our community. When it comes to housing affordability and availability, voters will have the opportunity to make their voice heard on November 5th.
Cary has long been a beacon for excellence. Nationally recognized for quality of life and a dynamic range of services, Cary also has a proven track record when it comes to managing the town's resources, maintaining an excellent AAA credit rating over the years through sound financial practices, and a tax rate that remains the lowest in Wake County. When it comes to financing, general obligation bonds are the fastest and least costly financing option a city or town can utilize. The 2024 Cary Community Bonds would be paid for through a staged series of property tax increases over the next 6 years. This November, you have an opportunity to decide what's best for Cary's future. Make your voice heard and help chart the course for Cary's tomorrow. Learn more by visiting carybonds.org.
Picture's worth 1,000 words, right? Yeah, our goal here is to educate. We're going to all the boards. We're doing a bunch of community meetings. We're at lazy days, that type of thing. So just we're providing you with information. Happy to answer any technical questions you have. But
I mean, I don't know how anybody could think it wasn't magnificent. I mean, you know, everything that's proposed is kind of off the chart cool. So, you know, I can't imagine you'd get anything negative there. You only got one challenge, and you're following up a massive tax increase with another one, and you'll have to figure out how to sell that to everybody.
well, our just to be clear, our staff as local government, our goal is to tell people the bonds are on the ballot, for them to understand what the bonds are going to be, and for them to understand what the financing charges are going to be, and then citizens can vote whether or not they want these projects.
Goes hand in hand.
Education's.
Right. Any other comments, questions?
Yeah, Scott, on the 3 cents, I want to make sure I understand this, because, I mean, 3 cents doesn't sound like a whole lot, right, per year, right? But
Yep.
the tax rate is an amount on, is it $100 of value or something like that?
Yeah, so there's two different components of your property tax rate. It's the rate itself, and then your value of your property, whether that's residential or commercial.
So it's 3 cents on the rate, so that dollar amount is not going to be 3 cents. It's going to be.
Oh, it's different. Yeah, it's different for everybody. Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
My point is that somebody looks at 3 cents. That's not too much, you know, but somebody who has $100,000 house is paying a lot less than somebody who has $1 million house. So it might be a point you might want to make.
Yeah, because I mean, ultimately, it's also not 3%, right? It's 3 times 3, 9% over the course of 6 years.
Yeah, it's not, so 9 cents on the
Right, 9
tax
cents,
rate.
which will,
Yeah.
on top of what the current rate is, it's about 26, 27%.
Yep.
Which will not include the cost of the operations. Yep, okay. Yep.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, one last item. And, you know, sorry, Katie, you have to follow a video. I mean, that's not very fair. You should have made him go last.
Yeah, why didn't we do that?
Yeah, I would have helped you with that. So all the boards have to submit an annual report, and we are so lucky that Katie helps us with ours, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, good evening, Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Board. I do not have a beautiful picture or even a cool video to show you, but you do have before you your draft work plan from this last year, and it was a good opportunity as we, went through and prepared the draft for you to take a look at, to just review the work of the Planning and Zoning Board over this last year. So the Planning and Zoning Board has 3 important tasks, which include reviewing rezoning proposals for consistency with the Imagine Cary Community Plan, reviewing amendments to the comprehensive plan, both of which you did tonight, as well as reviewing amendments to the land development ordinance. So in our review, looking back through members from the board reviewed a total of 10 rezoning requests, 1 LDO amendment, and weighed in twice on updates to the Imagine Cary Community Plan, which are still in a draft format. And of course, once the Imagine Cary Community Plan goes before the council for public hearing, it will be coming back before this board for a formal recommendation. So you'll have more to come on that. And so what are some of the impacts of these recommendations that the board has prepared over this last year? Well, they've helped Cary to align our stormwater regulations with requirements at the state level. Some of the rezoning recommendations that were provided will help the SRI Temple along Chapel Hill Road provide additional parking, will allow for mixed-use developments to be constructed within our developing destination centers. It will allow for infill and redevelopment to occur throughout Cary. So on behalf of all of us as staff, we'd like to thank you for the work that you've done to advance these developments in Cary. And then, of course, looking forward this year, we have several big cases similar to the one that you looked at and considered tonight. And so just to give you a sneak preview of some of these, you'll have South Hills coming up for your consideration, Alston Commons, which is another relatively large preliminary development plan in the Alston area. We'll also see more infill and redevelopment, such as the Waverly Place Shopping Center, which is also under rezoning currently, and that'll be coming before you in the future. So again, the draft work plan is for your consideration. Happy to take any questions that you have as you start to take a look at it. Thank you.
Thank you for everything you do for us. We appreciate it. Any questions or comments from anybody? No? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. That is all the business we have. Thank you so much for hanging in. I know this was long, and you guys did so much to help us get ready for tonight. So thank you. Meeting adjourned.